Okay, let's start the lesson. In the last class, what we have done is we have started this lesson and we have just talked about the initial part. We have discussed the contributions of certain scientists, right? So we have to talk about 8 to 9 scientists and their contributions regarding the books they have written, what they have done, etc., etc. Some of the scientists we have already completed, we are left out with just 2, right? I think you all remember the points that we have studied. At one particular scientist or one particular philosopher who has organized or who has classified the organisms on the basis of presence or absence of red blood, right? So who am I talking about? Aristotle, right? Next we have also talked about Carolus, Linnaeus, Bentham and Hooker, etc., etc., the demerits of Bentham and Hooker's classification, right? So another word that we remember is something called as serology, right? Karl Menz. So today what we will do, we are left out with 2 scientists, but instead of going through that way, what we will do is we will start with the classification system, and once we do the classification system, we will be talking about the remaining scientists also, right? So aaj ki korum classification system. Talking about classification system, what we remember, I think I have already said. So organisms has been classified and various scientists, various workers has tried to classify the organisms according to specific scientific rules and regulations, giving of names, identifying of the organisms, etc., etc. Classification is something that's has started from ancient time and it's still continuing, right? So we have certain types of classification system that were done by ancient or primitive philosophers, primitive scientists like Aristotle, Linnaeus, etc. I think you'll remember the words called as, we have talked about 3 words, no? Artificial classification, natural classification and phylogenetic, right? Agote junbila classification hoisile tak ami ki boli koisilo artificial, aru a classification is said to be artificial when it is only based on morphology, right? As the time progressed, ki hoise notun classification system develop korise. So what we have to study is primitive, ekdom original classification ki asile, etia ki classification ase, and we have to talk about around 6 types of classification system, right? So initially we had a classification system where the organisms were divided into just 2 groups. Either it had to be a plant or it had to be an animal, right? So agor scientists bilake specific iman details porha nasile. So organism eta paise either plant hobo nohole animal hobo. So jihetu organisms were divided into just 2 groups, that type of a classification would always be called as 2 system classification system, right? Similarly, when the 2 system was going on, another worker found certain types of demerits or drawback in the system. They have developed further works on that and ultimately they have come up with a 3 system classification, right? Similarly, they have come out with 4, 5 and 6, and I think I remember that I have already said the most accepted is obviously the 5 kingdom classification, but in spite of that we have something called as the 6 kingdom classification, right? 6 kingdom classification kon recent hoy etiao kam kori ase, but except kunkhon kori asu etialoke 5 kingdom, right? So we'll be discussing that. So classification system of first likha 2 kingdom classifications, but 2 kingdom system. Okay, so we are talking about the two kingdom system. Two kingdom system was proposed by Linnaeus. So obviously Linnaeus would be considered as a ancient worker, right? So yate question ahe, who has proposed the two kingdom classification? Jimankhon classification system porim, the scientists behind naam to janiboi lagibo. Thik ase three kingdom or logot kun associated. Tar logote another type of a question that is asked is identify or give the names of certain scientists or workers associated with two kingdom classification. It is not like this that only Linnaeus has divided the organisms into two groups, that is Plantae and Animalia. If you talk about Aristotle, he has also done the same thing, right? Aristotle ki korisile organisms ki plants or animals ore divide korisile. Eo ki korise plants or animals ore divide korise, but obviously the concept is his. Kintu some more workers associated with two kingdom or some more workers associated with primitive type of classification, Aristotle, Linnaeus, etc. Is the point clear? Okay. Now, so he has proposed, what he has done is living organism, I think it's understood, na? Either living organism to sai pele kiba eta basis ote to classify koribo. So what were the criteria for classification? Move ne cannot move, right? If it could move, then animals, and if it cannot move, plants. Thik teneke presence or absence of the cell wall, and I think we understand the basic difference between a plant cell and an animal cell ki hoy. At a cell to cell, you know, animal is made up of a cell and a plant is also made up of a cell, right? But there is a basic difference. What is the difference? The cell wall, right? Plant, car cell wall thake, plant or the animal or? Obviously plant cell wall. So, jedi cell wall size, jedi cell wall ase, obviously they were considered as plant or animals. And the last is mode of nutrition, photosynthetic, non-photosynthetic. Basi deeply boosted to research kora nasile, they were confined with only this, right? Similarly, this system accepted, not accepted, as of now obviously it's not accepted because it had certain type of demerits. And what are the demerits? Now we know, with time we often use these words, no? Organisms buli kole, organisms could be eukaryote, it could be a prokaryote also, it could be unicellular, it could be multicellular. Kintu two kingdom system at heblak words are mentioned in asile, right? So unicellular, multicellular, eukaryote, prokaryote, heblak eko concept asile. Okol ki asile? It had to be a plant or it had to be an animal. Is the point clear, right? So ekhini hol tahar drawback, and to explain the drawbacks, no, june drawbacks bilak ulaisile. Okol koi dile to no, he has to come out with certain types of examples also, right? So we have to discuss two examples, one being Euglena and the second example being slime molds, right? So Linnaeus ki koise, all the organisms either they had to be a plant or it had to be an animal, but we have certain exceptions being this two. Euglena and slime molds, these are certain types of organisms that will show both plant-like and also animal-like characteristics, right? Plant-like characteristics, animal-like, it is what? Animal-like characteristic, the basic characteristic that we think about is obviously mobile, right? But motile nature, jabo parine nware eta jegar pra, right? Jedi plant hoy, jabo nwaribo, jedi plant no hoy, tete jabo paribo. Kintu ihon duta inukwa organism, jar niki plant or animal or দুইটা characters show কৰে and details about euglena and slime molds we'll be discussing little later in the chapter but as of now have you heard about euglena before etu word শুনিছিলা নেকি নাই শুনা no so euglena is oh. Thank you euglena কেটামান points লিখাছোন আৰু ওপৰত লিখি দিয়া So two kingdom classification divided all the organisms, it has to either be a plant or it had to be an animal, but certain organisms neither they fit into the plant kingdom nor they fit into the animal kingdom. So tahat bilakok place code korim, and that was the reason why the recent classifications has come up. কারণ অকল যদি ইহঁতৰ প্ৰবলেম নাছিলে তেতিয়াহ'লে সব খালি টু কিংডম ক্লাসিফিকেশনে থাকিলেহেঁতেন সো first talking about euglena details, slime molds details, as we have said, if you heard something called as protist or protista যদি পঢ়িছা তেতিয়াহ'লে we'll be discussing this two under the heading of protista kingdom protista বুলি এটা kingdom আছে so they fall under that আৰু তাত আমি details কৰিম as of now euglena the first sentence that we need to remember is it forms a link between animals and plants and why we are saying this because they have certain plant like and certain animal like as far as the characters are concerned I think we can understand right plant like character ও আছে animal like character ও আছে plant like character কি কৈছে autotroph we understand the meaning of autotrophs and heterotrophs no nijor khwa bostu nije banaise so obviously that's a plant character right kintu plant like character kisuman nayo animal like ki ase so absorbs food absorption of food you can relate it to amoeba also right pseudovacuole bilak form kori pele absorb korisile no so they can have two ways so as a result they show certain plant like and certain animal like and the second point The basic difference between a plant and an animal cell, no? Cell wall যদি থাকে তেতিয়াহে plant ইহঁতৰ cell wall নাই ঠিক আছে কিন্তু photosynthetic to হয়, right? So you can be plant koma ne animal koma, so that's a problem. Similarly, in this case also, they will have certain animal-like and certain plant-like, right? Animal-like we understood. As far as this point is concerned, I mean, details for it will become more clearer. As of now, what I am saying is the formation of spores during the time of reproduction. And spore formation is a characteristic of a plant and not of an animal, right? So, jetia spores bilak form koribo, spores bilak disperse hobo, tar pora germinate kori ako notun plant form koribo, right? So spore formation ihote dekhai ketia dekhabo reproduction or homoy, and that character is considered as a plant like character. Ketia only during the process of reproduction. Jedi reproductive stage of tahate plant like hoy, vegetative stage of ki hobo, animal like. Is the point clear? So these were the two drawbacks about two kingdom classification. This is all about two kingdom. Buji palu no? Okay. Next likha three kingdom classification. Or three kingdom system. Two kingdom kune disile tato tik koriba ha linear or term dot. So two kingdom of ki asile organisms were divided into plants or animals, right? Etia third kingdom boli kole ei duta thakiboi tar upori aru eta notun, so aru eta notun ki hol it was called as protista. Yate ki asile no differentiation between unicellular, multicellular, eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Unicellular, multicellular we understand, no? Single cell and multiple cells. Eukaryote and prokaryote janun. There are so many differences, but some of the basic difference we always understand. No? Eukaryote, prokaryote, a major point of difference in terms of key. Yeah, we are talking about that word called as nucleus or that cell organelle, right? Eukaryotic cell eta keneke identify korim je tahator nucleus thakibo, kintu prokaryotic cell or nucleus na thake. Aru bahut differences ase, and that's one of the major, right? So yate ki korile animals or plants or sob asile, they have taken out the unicellular eukaryotes, right? Eukaryotes, prokaryotes. When we talk about eukaryotes, so eukaryotes could be unicellular, eukaryotes could be multicellular also. Okay, if you are talking about prokaryotes agote to hunisa naam to, eta example question prokaryote. Best example of a prokaryote, a bacteria. Right? When we talk about the bacteria unicellular, multicellular, obviously unicell. So what we understand, eukaryotes could be both unicellular and multicellular, right? Multicellular eukaryote is an example. Human beings, the best, right? We are any advanced animal is an example of multicellular eukaryote, right? But that does not mean eukaryotes will be so multicellular. Kisuman eukaryotes unicellular ase, so gutei unicellular eukaryotes has been placed under one kingdom that is called as protista. Is the concept clear? Right? So junto two kingdom classification or problem asile that they did not differentiate between unicellular and multicellular. This is one kingdom that tried to difference between unicellular and eukaryotes, right? Next likha four kingdom. Three kingdom ek hi diye. Question I have, what is the third kingdom and who has proposed it? Aru protista boli kole, it is a kingdom of, protista is a kingdom of unicellular eukaryotes. Okol unicellular kole nohobo, because the next kingdom is a kingdom of unicellular organisms, that is Monera, right? So kingdom of unicellular eukaryote ki hoy protista, kingdom of prokaryote ki hoy Monera, right? Now actually this name is more frequently used instead of this one. So if you see A naam to almost the same, but both of them includes different organisms. If you talk about mycota, it includes only fungi, but if you talk about mycota, it includes prokaryotes. So A2 ketiaba dibo pare, A2 ketiaba dibo pare, but it's not mycota. H2 nathakile fungi hoi jabo, right? Kintu frequently used word is this one. So yate ahe ako as usual, who has proposed the 4 kingdom classification and what is the 4th kingdom? The 4th kingdom is Monera. Monera is considered as a kingdom of dash. It is considered as a kingdom of prokaryotes. Clear? Yate aru eta point likha. Is this line understood? Agote organisms ki asile? Plants, animals, right? Next ki korile? Unicellular organisms kini uloi anile? Unicellular organisms kini kihot hole? Protista, right? Unicellular organisms bilakot ki ase tumar? You have eukaryotes, you have prokaryotes also. Unicellular could be eukaryotes, it could be prokaryotes also. Unicellular eukaryotes remain in protista aru prokaryotes kini notun eta kingdom dile Monera. Etu buji paisan nai, right? Originally organisms, plants and animals, right? Tar pora ki separate kori ahile? Unicellular kini separate kori dile. Unicellular has been divided into 2 categories: unicellular eukaryotes, unicellular prokaryotes. Both the 2 types of organisms belongs to 2 different kingdoms. Right? So unicellular eukaryotes in protista, unicellular prokaryotes in Monera, right? Ekini hol niki? Okay. So after the 4 kingdom classification, something was not clear. What was not clear? The position of fungi, because we know whenever we are talking about organisms, it could be eukaryote, it could be prokaryote, it could be a plant, it could be an animal, unicellular or multicellular. But apart from that, we have something called as fungi also. It is fungi key, and within these 4 kingdoms that we have talked about, to be fungi kothoba. Neither it could be placed in that unicellular, right? Multicellular boli okol koleo nohobo ar multicellular jodi kom plant ne animal, you have to be precise, right? So jehetu fungi position was not clear, that led to the development of the 5 kingdom classification system, right? Ekhini jodi hol 5 kingdom classification system heading koriba. Whittaker likha ba RH Whittaker likha? It's better to write RH Whittaker. So 5 kingdom classification system kon kihor karone develop korile because they had a problem in placing fungi. Now talking about fungi, we can also say fungi why it had to be assigned to a different kingdom. Kihor karone ekon belek kingdom dokar hol. E gutei kita kingdom ot kiyo fit nokore. Karon it could neither be called as a plant nor it could be called as an animal because if it is a plant it should have prepared its own food, but we know fungi to ketiyao nijor khoa bostu nije nobonai, it's not green in color, right? Secondly, it is neither an animal because it does not move from one place to another, right? Plus spore formation kore because the basic mode of reproduction in case of fungi is always spore. Jeneke ami bacteria boli kole the basic mode of reproduction is binary fission, right? So each and every organism will have their unique method of reproduction. Fungi basic mode ki spore production, and spore production is a characteristic of a plant. So neither plant nor animal, so they were forced to assign a separate kingdom for fungi, and the 5th kingdom was called as fungi. Now on the basis of what a criteria can be important. So 5 kingdom classification system was proposed by Whittaker. What was the new kingdom that was formed? Etialoke ami keita porilo 4ta kingdom, no? Plant, animal, protista and monera. Now the 5th kingdom is fungi, right? So when he was going for the classification, he took certain points into consideration. What are the points that he has considered? If you notice, no, 2 kingdom classification of jiman bilak problem asile gutekini solve holle nai. 2 kingdom classification system had a problem in finding out the prokaryote and eukaryote. It had a problem in distinguishing the unicellular and multicellular also. It had a problem in the mode of nutrition also. 2 kingdom or ami demerit ki likhisu soasun. It could not distinguish between the eukaryote and the prokaryote. It could not distinguish between unicellular and multicellular. So gute answer kini ami kot palu 5 kingdom classification. Is the point clear, right? And so this kingdom classification system is the most accepted up till now, right? Yate question kene kya hai? Eduta to question ahi boy. Yate ata basic swap board point of view or MCQ point of view. Board points of view or criteria for classification, you have to write everything, right? And MCQ point of view, what is the most important criteria, or what is the criteria for classification of, or what is the criteria for 5 kingdom classification? Tetia ki kore enukwa 5tar bhitor 4ta di diye. Sabole gole gutei kitai to criteria hoy. So what is the answer they are expecting is what is the most important criteria? Out of all this, so what's the important kuntu? Mode of nutrition, karan fungi, it was a plant-like organism but could not what? Make their own food. So MCQ point of the most important criteria for 5 kingdom classification is mode of nutrition. কিন্তু যদি long question আহে গুটেইকিটা আৰু অপশনত যদি MCQs of 4টা অপশনত যদি first 4 থাকে তেতিয়াও answer কিন্তু mode of nutrition এ হ'ব বুজি পাইছা okay cellular organization we understood body complexity understood mode of nutrition also we understood are these words understood absorption and ingestion জানো no animals certain animals ingest আমি কি কৰো absorb নে ingest no okay ecological role I think I have said about this before also no every organism in the ecosystem will have a particular role either it will be a producer or it will be a consumer or it will be a decomposer no organism to ki kaam korise organism to jodi produce korise tak ami ki boli kom plant right jodi khaise kabak tetale it will be acting as a consumer so we are considering the animal part and if they are helping in decomposition obviously the microorganisms right and finally the mode of reproduction so ekhiniye hol tomar 5 kingdom classification according to 5 kingdom classification etia ekhini hoise leke likha which one the last point or this one okay so etia ami ki porilo 5 kingdom classification of we have studied about 5 kingdoms what are the 5 kingdoms monera protista fungi plantae and animalia right now as far as this sequence is concerned obviously if you are writing it in a sequence it talks about what evolution right generally it talks about evolution for about the first two part you cannot be saying the plants or animals hoise right normally when we talk about this suppose say ancient organisms boli kole ki hobo bacteria to hobo so obviously the kingdom monera right etia asason duta diagram okay so if we are arranging it in a sequence we understood that we are talking about evolution ami ki dekhilu the ancient kingdom by ancient organisms belongs to monera evolved hoi pelai ki form korise protista and so this is something that we study now is this diagram correct terms of evolution ami eta sequence or arrange korisu right the sequence talks about ki evolution it talks about that this kingdom has been evolved from this right ekhiloke ami buji palo if that is our understanding just see whether this diagram is correct or not obviously not why it's not correct because you cannot be saying that fungi pra plants hoise fungi pra keneke plant hobo fungi to tara independent kingdom and this diagram talks about as a fungi pra plants hoise plants kini gute animals ole convert hoi goise enukwa niki tenuka to nohoy right ekhini loke thike ase kinte yar pra the diagram is wrong so what is the diagram is this diagram understood right so we have the ancient organisms tarpora evolve hoy pele ki form korise protista the one word that you have to remember it is the kingdom of unicellular eukaryotes etu ki asile prokaryotes etu ki unicellular eukaryotes so this is one of the kingdom which contains the maximum number of organisms whenever you talk about any particular kingdom suppose we are talking about plant kingdom ot ki thakibo okol plants animal kingdom ot ki thakibo okol animals even then if you talk about monera tat ki thakibo okol prokaryotes right but if you talk about protista this is one and only kingdom that is considered as a junk box this is something that we are going to study in details later junk box boli ki ho karone koise because it has fungi like organisms it has plant like organisms it has animal like organisms also so fungi like protist ase animal like protist ase aru plant like protist ase right so different types of organisms belong to the same kingdom. So this is supposed to be a very huge kingdom. Huge বুলি নকৈ পেলাই we can use a word called as diverse. বাকিবিলাক kingdom diverse নহয় কাৰণ এটা type of organisms থাকে. Planted অকল plants থাকে কিন্তু protista কি থাকে plant like protist থাকে animal like protist থাকে আৰু fungi like protist থাকে. So obviously this diagram is wrong and this is the correct diagram, right, in terms of evolution. So this is all about 5 kingdom classification and this is what is most accepted. But apart from that we have something called a 6 kingdom classification. Heading koriba 6 kingdom. So many of the points that has been marked and each and every point is important. Talking about 6 kingdom classification, who has proposed? A scientist called as Carl Woese, right? Criteria for classification. Criteria for classification is ribosomal study, right? What is a ribosome? It is a cell organelle, and what is the main function? Protein synthesis, no? A protein factory buli koi. Eta cellor bhitorot bahut bilak organelles thake, and the common organelle that we talk about is nucleus, but it is not like this that it contains only nucleus, no? Ribosomes thakibo, mitochondria thakibo. So what he has done, he has studied the ribosome. As far as 16S is concerned, we will be studying later that ribosomes beleg types or ase, right? So we have 30S ribosomes, we have 60S ribosome, and basically we will be talking about two types of ribosomes, 70S and 80S. যেনেকৈ আমি আগতে কৈছিলোঁ ন, ইউক্যাৰিওটছ এণ্ড প্ৰ'ক্যাৰিওটছৰ এটা মেজৰ পইণ্ট অফ ডিফাৰেঞ্চ কি? দ্য প্ৰেজেঞ্চ অফ দ্য নিউক্লিয়াছ, ৰাইট? প্ৰ'ক্যাৰিওটছৰ নিউক্লিয়াছ নাথাকে, কি থাকে? নিউক্লিয়ইড থাকে, ৰাইট? বিকজ দে ডোণ্ট হেভ আ নিউক্লিয়াৰ মেমব্ৰেইন. আনাদাৰ পইণ্ট অফ ডিফাৰেঞ্চ ইজ 70S type of ribosomes in case of prokaryotes and both 70 and 80S in case of eukaryote. যদি এটা সেলত অকল 70S ribosome আছে, তেতিয়াহ'লে সেই সেলটো prokaryote হ'ব. যদি এটা সেলত দুইটা type of ribosomes আছে, obviously more is 80S, তেতিয়াহ'লে that cell would be considered as a prokaryote. So as I said, ribosomes could be of different types, and we have a word called as, or we have a letter called as S. What is S? S or duta meaning ase. Pisot ami details porhim, ite likhibo nalage. When we will be talking about the chapter called as cell unit of life, tat ami ribosomes details or porhim. S ki hokare dise? First a scientist or naam to Sedberg. It's called as a Sedberg's constant. Second is, it is also called as sedimentation coefficient. Sedimentation coefficient ki ho lage? We understand the process of sedimentation, right? So eta cells, if you want to study, you have to study each and every organelle, each and every part of the cell. There are certain organelles that have a membrane. Jenenge nucleus to study koribo lagile, it is very easy. Why? You can abstract the nucleus, you can isolate that nucleus, and then you can study, right? Cell to ase dhuniyake proper eta structure ase, isolate korilo, study korilo. Kintu kisuman organisms janike membrane na thake, যদি মেমব্ৰেইন নাথাকে, সেইটো কনফাইন্ড হৈ নাথাকিব ন, তো তুমি ষ্টাডি কৰিবলৈ প্ৰব্লেম হ'ব. চ' ইন দ্যাট কেছ উই গ' ফৰ দ্য প্ৰচেছ কল্ড ছেডিমেণ্টেশ্যন ইন কেছ অফ ৰাইব'জম ডিডাকশ্যন. চ' ছেডিমেণ্ট কৰি গোটেই প্ৰ'ট'প্লাজমখিনি ছেডিমেণ্টেশ্যন হেৰিত চেণ্ট্ৰিফিউজ মেচিনত ঘূৰাই দেটছ এ লং প্ৰচেছ. আল্টিমেটলি টেষ্ট টিউবটোৰ তলত চবতছে কি হেভিয়াৰ পাৰ্টিকলছবোৰ ছেটেল ডাউন কৰিব ন. তুমি ভাবাচোন সেল এটা আছে, সেলত কি আছে? প্ৰ'ট'প্লাজম আছে, প্ৰ'ট'প্লাজম চেণ্ট্ৰিফিউজ মেচিন. হোৱাট ইজ দ্য চেণ্ট্ৰিফিউজ মেচিন? এটা মেচিন য'ত নেকি টেষ্ট টিউব এটা থাকিব, চাইটোপ্লাজমখিনি দিব, সি ঘূৰি থাকিব, ৰাইট? কাৰেণ্টত ঘূৰি থাকি এটা টাইমত কি হ'ব যে ছলিড আৰু দ্য জেল পাৰ্ট উইল ছেপাৰেট এণ্ড ছলিড পাৰ্টিকলছ উইল ডিপজিট ডাউন. ডিপজিটিং ডাউন ইজ ছেডিমেণ্টেশ্যন, ৰাইট? চ' একৰ্ডিং টু দেট কোনটো ৰিব'জম বেছিকৈ ছেডিমেণ্ট কৰিছে? যোনটো হেভি, ৰাইট? অকণমান লাইটবিলাক ওপৰত থাকিব. বেছড অন দেট উই হেভ ডিফাৰেণ্ট types. Details later. So what is the criteria? Eighth about question ahe. Jeneke 5 kingdom classification or criteria ki mode of nutrition. 6 kingdom classification or criteria ki study of 16S ribosomes, right? Next, another point is he has given a very important term. It's called as domain. So question ahe, the concept of domain was given by domain was given by Carl Woese in his 6 kingdom classification system, right? According to him, what he said is jiman bilak organisms asile gutei organisms bilakok tinta domainot thoi dibo pari. Ami etialake ki pori asilu je jiman bilak organisms ase ami 5ta kingdomot thobo parim, right? 5 kingdomoloke to hetuye porisu. Etia ki koise je jiman bilak organisms ase tak ami 3ta domainot dibo parim, and this 3 domains contains how many kingdoms? 6. And now since we are talking about the 6th kingdom, what is the new kingdom? Already to pasta porhi ahilu, right? We have talked about Monera, Protista, fungi, Plantae and Animalia. So 6th is Archaebacteria. Clear? Next. S 165 or nisa lagise niki dekha 16 SS.
What do you mean by the concept of domain?
The concept of domain is a term domain, or the fact that kingdoms could be assigned to several domains. That is what is called as concept of domain, right? Is this understood? বুজি পাইছো কি দিছিলে ডোমেইনৰ কনসেপ্টটো দিছিলে ন according to him organisms were placed into how many domains 3 domains and what are the 3 domains archaea bacteria aru eukarya right prior to 6th kingdom classification archaea bacteria was placed under monera যেতিয়ালৈকে 5 কিংডম ক্লাসিফিকেশন চলি আছিলে আৰ্কি বেক্টেৰিয়াটো আগৰ পৰা আছে তো হেখিনি অৰ্গানিজমছৰ প্লেসমেন্ট কি আছিলে তাহাতক মনেৰাৰ উইদিনত প্লেস কৰি থৈ দিছিলে বাট নাও উই সি দ্যাট বেক্টেৰিয়া এণ্ড আৰ্কি বেক্টেৰিয়া হ্যাজ বিন সেপাৰেটেড এণ্ড আ নিউ ডোমেইন হ্যাজ বিন assigned right and later we will study that no doubt bacteria or archaebacteria both of them are prokaryotes itself kintu bahut points of difference ase they cannot be placed within the same group right Is it understood? Right? So, bacteria ki thakibo, it will include the domain bacteria consists of the kingdom Monera, right? The domain Eukarya consists of baki tinta chungita ami already porisu no Protista, Plantae and Animalia. So, what has been separated? Archaebacteria kini ulai anile, right? Okay. So, this is according to 6th classification kintu what we will be following is obviously 5. So, in our studies what we will do archaebacteria within Monera hisabe pohim ami to 6th kingdom classification study nokoru etia ami study ki korim 5 kingdom or mote archaebacteria placement ki asile within Monera right kintu now we know that archaebacteria forms another kingdom. Is the point clear? Ekin loke kiba doubts? Okay, now the question is, remember the word called as taxonomic hierarchy, taxonomic categories, right? Organisms, since we are talking about classification, so obviously classify koribo, kenege classify koribo according to that hierarchical system, right? So taxonomic hierarchy, highest category ki asile? Okay, taxonomic hierarchy, obligate characters keta asile? Hatta asile, we remember this. Keep pots clean, otherwise family gets sick. Ekhini jano to highest ki asile kingdom yate kingdom kunkhini ebila kingdom hoy nohoy right ekhini kami ki boli koisu gutei kini ar ki hok monera hok hegita hok tak ami ki boli koisu kingdom right if they are kingdom egita ki hoy domain instead of using the word domain we can be using a word called as super kingdom এখিনি লোকে কি আসলে কিংডম হাইয়েস্ট আসলে ন এখিনি 5 কিংডম ক্লাসিফিকেশন লোকে 6 কিংডম যেহেতু রিসেন্ট কিংডমৰ ওপৰটো কিবা এটা বস্তু ওলাই গল কি ওলালে সুপার কিংডম দ্যাট ইজ কল্ড এজ ডোমেইন ইজ দ্য পয়েন্ট ক্লিয়ার সো ডোমেইন কুড অলসো বি কনসিডার্ড অ্যাজ Is it clear? Kingdom oloke ami janu jehetu domain dekhisu etia domain tu no ki hoy something that is above the kingdom is super kingdom right so this is all about the introductory part of the lesson we have talked about the contribution of certain scientists and the classification system what we have seen from ancient time onwards the classification system has been improvised and first it has started with the second 2 system classification and now we see a 6th kingdom classification but in spite of that we will be following the 5 kingdom classification right so 5 kingdom classification or kingdom keta ami janu so each and every kingdom in details we have to do so the first kingdom that we will be talking about is Monera right Monera in details bacteria in details ekhin loge kiba doubts ase jodi khuda nohole kingdom Monera boli heading koro sharing a joke নে কি আৰু অকণ কথা পাতা না অকলে বহালে ভাল লাগিব কাক কৈছিলোঁ গম পাইছাই চাগে ন অকলে বহাই দিলে ভাল লাগে যদি কৰি দিওঁ আৰু ন okay so details about kingdom Monera obviously this is a vast kingdom so some of the points that we already know kingdom Monera is a kingdom of unicellular organisms. Some examples of unicellular organisms, bacteria being the best example. We have something called as cyanobacteria also. Two of the examples we have written, but now we will be studying that Monera boli kole there are 8 types of Monera, right? And bacteria is just one amongst them. Cyanobacteria is the second one, Archaebacteria is the third one, right? We have something called as Rickettsia, we have something called as Spirochetes, etc., etc. So Monera, we taught 8 types of Monera. Out of that, 5 types you need to study, right? From both point of view. So we will be studying that. And next point that we know, first case I know, it's a kingdom of prokaryotes. Second is, we know that there are of 8 types. Third is, a best example, bacteria. Fourth is, obviously, ancient organisms. So from evolution point of view, the most ancient kingdom kuntu hobo Monera. So some of the points that we know, baki points ami likhim etia. Etia ar baki khini notes or nisna. Okay, first 2 points understood, right? Third point, Monera is a kingdom, and obviously in this kingdom, eta organism asane bahut ase, right? As far as these organisms are concerned, what is the mode of nutrition of the organisms belonging to Monera? You cannot be having a specific answer. You cannot be saying that they are all, autotrophs. You cannot be saying that they are all heterotrophs. So you have certain autotrophic, certain heterotrophic. Etia Monera boli kore, the best example that we remember is bacteria. So bacteria mode of nutrition ki hoy? Eta obviously heterotroph, tade nije no bonai, right? So maximum of the monerans are heterotrophs. Second question to eneke naha is a give an example of a heterotrophic Monera. question I have given example of an autotrophic Monera, and that is cyanobacteria. I think you have heard the word called as blue-green algae, right? So blue-green algae is also called as cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria belongs to what? Monera, but it is an example of an autotrophic. In the normal bacteria, they are heterotrophs. Clear? Okay, so this is a point important. Next, this kingdom is considered as the most, or the kingdom of widespread organisms, because we know there are prokaryotes almost everywhere, right? So it's widespread, and we have used a word called as ubiquitous. Ubiquitous is synonymous to universal. Yeah, universal jano no ami, universally present. So ubiquitous boli kiho karone koy. Apo let's talk about bacteria itself. Bacteria code present. Bacteria code paba almost everywhere, right? Almost everywhere, mane starting from land, air, water, everywhere. And apart from that, if you talk in terms of an organism etar petor bhitor to thakibo pare, bahir to thakibo pare, right? So give me one example of bacteria that is found inside the human body. Yeah, you can say, but the most common thing that we talk about is E. coli, right? E. coli bacteria. So it has a very positive effect on your digestive system. Right? So now we understand. Sobote thake inside the body of an organism, outside the body of an organism, etc., etc. So we have used a word called as ubiquitous. Secondly, no doubt they are widespread, but even then it is less known. Why is it less known? Because there are thousands of bacteria that has not yet been identified. Right? Etiao bahut baki ase. So it is called as less known. Right? So, I actually discuss general characteristics of Monera. Next, if you are talking about these organisms, we have to consider another point, cell wall. So, junbilak organisms ase Monera, hey organisms bilakor cell wall thakibone na thake. Let's talk from bacteria point of view again. Bacteria cell wall ase nai. But bacteria, okay, in other way around, if you have studied bacteria, zoology porisa and botany porisa, obviously botany porisa. So it gives you enough hint, right? So why is it considered as plant bully to ami noko, but plant like? The basic thing is that it has a cell wall, right? So organisms bilakor kisumanor cell wall ase, kisumanor cell wall nai. Again, the two organisms, bacteria and archaebacteria. Bacteria cell wall ase, archaebacteria cell wall nai. Both belong to Monera itself. Right? Actually, bacteria boli ami pisole word to use no kori pelai, we'll be using a word called as eubacteria, right? Because archaea is also a bacteria, the normal bacteria is also a bacteria. So instead of using those two words, we'll be using a word called as eubacteria or true bacteria, jar cell wall ase. Right? Or archaebacteria, sorry, ki archaebacteria ko nai absent hobo tumar archaebacteria ro cell wall ase, sorry, কিন্তু difference আছে এইবিলাক পিছত পঢ়িম এটা monera that is where the cell wall is absent, sorry, not archaebacteria, mycoplasma, right? Archaebacteria ro cell wall ase, bacteria ro cell wall ase, kintu constitution is different, the structure is different. Kintu one monera that does not have a cell wall, mycoplasma. Aru eta cellot jodi cell wall nathake tetale ki hobo? Don't you think that it will have different shapes and sizes? At least it could keep on changing the shape, and that is the reason why mycoplasma is considered as a joker of the plant kingdom, right? Karan eta specific heri nai, shape nai. Bacteria eta eta cell wall ase, to eta specific ki thakibo, shape thakibo, kintu mycoplasma nathake. Thik teneke ako question ki ahise, etor upor to question nahe, karan present bacteria janu, absent kar etor upor question. তোমালোকে সেল ওয়াল বা প্লান্ট সেল এনিমেল সেল অকমান পঢ়িছা নে পঢ়া নাই? অকমানটো পঢ়িছা ন? সো এটলিষ্ট এইটো পইণ্ট চালো যে প্লান্ট সেল এনিমেল সেলৰ বেচিক পইণ্ট অফ ডিফাৰেন্স সেল ওয়াল। সেল ওয়ালৰ বেচিক কনষ্টিটুৱেণ্ট জানোনে? Exactly. Cellulose is something that you have heard, right? So jetia ami plant cell ko, plant cell or plant cell wall thake, cell wall or basic constituent ki hoy cellulose. Bacteria also has a cell wall, but it does not have cellulose. So question to hetu upor ahe, they have something called as peptidoglycan, right? Details about the cell wall jeti ami bacteria korim, then we will be studying. As of now we know that it is not made up of cellulose, right? So we have compared what we have talked about, the nutrition, mode of nutrition of Monera, we have talked about the cell wall of Monera. The next point is locomotion. Talking about bacteria, bacteria bilak eta jagar pra antu jagale move koribo pare ne nware. Alright, they have something called the flagella, if you remember, right? Locomotory organs ase. So they can move from one place to another. But does that mean all monerans can move from one place to another? No. Right? Kisuman ki ase sedentary ase, aru kisuman ki ase motile ase. Motile or example ki hobo? Bacteria. So question to obviously etu question nahe je motile monera eta example diya. Non-motile monera cyanobacteria. Blue green algae cannot move. Right?
Can you spell that word made of?
Myco. Oh, this one, polysaccharide. Okay, what is polysaccharide? Polysaccharide, saccharide is nothing but sugar, right? Both types of sugar, I think you have heard something called this glucose, sucrose. These are nothing but sugars, right? So sugars, it's made up of one molecule. They are both molecules together. If it is made up of just one molecule, it's a monosaccharide, right? Two molecules together making one sugar, disaccharide, right? Similarly, we have a term called as polysaccharide. Right? One. Huh? Huh? If you are talking about the cell wall, no, it's the same one. If you are talking about bacteria or the eubacteria, tahator sobore cell wall to ekei hobo, right? Kintu apart from sugar, sugar to thakiboi, and these would be also present. Kintu it does not mean that each and every bacteria will have different sugar. No, cell wall is constant. যেনেকৈ প্লান্টৰ যিকোনো প্লান্টেই হ'ব পাৰে, এলগিও হ'ব পাৰে, এনজিওস্পাৰ্মছো হ'ব পাৰে, চেল ৱালত চেলিউলোজ থাকিবই, চেলিউলোজটো ভেৰি নকৰে, ঠিক তেনেকৈ পলিছেকাৰাইডটো ভেৰি নকৰে। What do you know about the reproduction of these organisms? When we talk about reproduction, how many types of reproduction you know? 2 types, sexual, asexual, right? Sexual reproduction is a characteristic of lower organisms, ne higher, generally higher, right? Kisuman lower plants here dekhai, algae dekhai. Generally we believe that it is something that's advanced and evolved character, right? Now Monera is a kingdom of ancient organisms. Ar ki ase bacteria. Bacteria sexually reproduce kore jano. Bacteria, so sexual reproduction hobo lagile, what is the most important necessity? Gametes form koribo lagibo. So gamete formation okoman advanced characteristic, right? If you talk about advanced kingdom, plantae, gamete formation, animalia, gamete formation, right? Kintu lower organisms tahator ki hoy, first to lower organisms bilakor, the first point, they can have various methods of reproduction. Higher organisms are matro one type of reproduction. Either they will be confined with asexual or they would be confined with sexual. Lower organisms can switch over also because they are ancient, right? So there are 2 types of reproduction in their same lifespan they can have, right? So different favorable environment conditions, they will be reproducing in a different way. Unfavorable condition or if you are talking about high organisms, human beings, you are talking about animals, whatever might be the environmental condition, we will be sticking to just one type of reproduction. That is the characteristic of higher organisms, right? Next is talking about these organisms, ancient, first, second best example, Monera. Third, Monera is a kingdom of unicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms are what's a common way of reproduction? Binary fission. So, here common ki hobo binary fission, or binary fission is a part of asexual ne sexual? Asexual. So the most common type of reproduction would be asexual. অকল বাইনাৰী ফিশন নে আৰু কিবা দেখা পাম? আনফেভৰেবল কণ্ডিশ্যনত কি কৰিব? স্প'ৰ ফৰ্মেশ্যনৰ কথা কৈছিলোঁ। We'll be sticking to just one type of reproduction. Animals, human beings stick to only sexual mode of reproduction. You cannot be going for a vegetative reproduction. You cannot be going through a asexual reproduction. But in case of lower organisms, later we'll study, we can see 2 types of reproduction within that same organism. That's a characteristic of a lower. Hey, those organisms, because of evolution, has become advanced, and when you are advanced, you stick to one, right?
So higher organisms only undergo
Sexual reproduction, yes, because they will, okay, higher organisms you cannot be saying like that because there are certain plants that are also higher, but there are certain plants that do not form gametes, right? So vegetative reproduction is also seen, right? But they will be sticking to one, they cannot be switching over.
So lower organisms they can undergo
Yeah. Anytime, right? They can go for vegetative, they can, I have written two of the examples, they can go for binary fission, they can go for spore formation also. Obviously, it depends upon the condition. Favorable condition is binary fission, unfavorable condition will be spore formation, right? Okay. So, when we talk about reproduction, there is a question I have, what is the mode of reproduction of Monera? Purely asexual. However, unicellular organisms reproduces sexually, asexually, obviously asexually. So, if the question is asked, is sexual reproduction present in unicellular organisms? No, right. So, since sexual reproduction is not present, so obviously gametes are not formed. So, sexual reproduction absent, kintu sexual recombination present. There is a difference between sexual reproduction and sexual recombination. Bacteria, sexual reproduction present or absent? Absent. Sexual recombination present or absent? Present. Right? As I said, since they are lower organisms, they can reproduce by different methods. They can reproduce asexually. They can go for some other type of reproduction also, which is said to be sexual recombination. Now, the point is, what is the difference between sexual reproduction and recombination? Right. So, duita word to sexually koiso. Sexual reproduction hobo lagile. Actually, reproduction process to hoy ki. If you are talking about sexual reproduction, we see the gametes. Gametes or ki thake genetic material, right? So, sexual reproduction or ki form kore, duta gamete form kore, right? You have a male gamete, you have a male gamete, you have a female gamete, right? So, gametes form koribo lagibo. Next, ki hobo? Okal gamete form kore ne fusion hoy. Obviously, fusion hobo. So, this and this will fuse. Fuse kori pele. Ultimately, ki form kore? We have talked about zygote, right? So, zygote form kore. Zygote or yar genetic material or yar genetic material combine hoise nahi. So, sexual reproduction in other way around, we can also say that it is a method in which the genetic materials get mixed up or fused. Obviously, A to fuse hoise. Zygote form korise. So, sexual reproduction ami keneke define koro. Formation and fusion of gametes is a must. What does the gametes do? Fuse. So, what is the fusion all about? Fusion of genetic material. Now, in case of bacteria, genetic material or fusion hoy, kino gamete form no kore. Is the point understood? So, in normal types of sexual reproduction, hoise ki nuclear material fuse hoise. Fuse hoy pelai eta father, eta mother. Duitar nuclear material fuse hoise, fuse hoy pelai zygote form korise, the baby would be formed, right? So, ultimately sexual reproduction hoise ki genetic material or fusion hoise, right? Clear? Bacteria to genetic material or fusion hoy, kintu gamete form no kore. Jihetu gamete form no kore, we are not using the word sexual reproduction, kintu jihetu fusion hoy, we are using the word sexual recombination. Is it clear? What is the doubt? Yeah, ask.
At first the fusion
Yeah, you please continue.
first both the gametes are fused and after that the zygote is formed. So in sexual recombination the zygote doesn't form.
We won't be using these terms because these terms are related with sexual reproduction. But we will see a cell that has these characteristics.
Can you repeat the definition what you said about
Sexual recombination. Sexual recombination is a process in which two organisms will exchange their genetic material or genetic material will fuse but without the formation of gametes. In normal type of sexual reproduction, you have a male, you have a female. Tahat duitare genetic material fuses and then only the baby is produced or the offspring is produced. So, what because of for reproduction to happen, ki hobo lagibo? The genetic material needs to get fused.
but at first we get the gametes, then the fusion
Yeah, it is in case of the normal sexual reproduction that we are talking about.
But without gametes, how will it?
That is the reason why it is called a sexual recombination. If gametes are formed in bacteria, then we would have straightly defined that sexual reproduction is a characteristic of bacteria. How the process occurs, obviously we will be studying. There are three ways.
Bacteria doesn't have gametes.
No, it doesn't have gametes. If gametes were present, then we would have said sexual reproduction is present in bacteria, right? Without the formation of gametes, sexual recombination takes place where genetic material fuses. How does this process occur? We will be studying. There are three methods through which the process occurs, right? We have certain things called as conjugation, if you have heard. So, conjugation is a process that occurs in bacteria in which the genetic material fuses, but gametes are not formed.
So, in sexual reproduction, we define as male and female gametes to differentiate between them. So, in sexual recombination, how would the same?
Male bacteria, female bacteria. Now, okay, if you are talking about this, we will be talking about everything in details. By the time we finish bacteria, you will have all the answers. Since this is new, so you are not getting the answers properly. But in spite of that, whenever we talk about the normal sexual reproduction, what is necessary is a male and a female. Generally, we have hermaphrodites also, right? That is a different issue. But normally, we have a male, we have a female. One organism to be identified as a male or a female has certain characters. You cannot be saying that this organism is male, this organism is female, this human being is male, this human being is female. You need to have a characteristic. So, if you have a definite characteristic, then only it's a male or it's a female, right? Sexual at a character thakibo lagibo. Tetiahe tumi male or female. That is in case of higher organisms. Dekhile compound, this is male, this is female. But in case of lower organisms where the bacteria is just made up of one cell, you cannot be having two different bacteria. All the bacteria looks the same. But since we are talking about this process, we have to consider certain bacteria as male and certain bacteria as female. We have certain criteria also. Kiba kibi thakile male hobo, kiba kibi nathakile female hobo. Hey, kiba kibi kintu porime. Apart from that, one basic thing to identify a lower organism. This could be the explanation for fungi also, right? Any smaller organisms. Male fungi, female fungi boli nathake nohoy. Male bacteria, female bacteria boli nathake nohoy. So, ketia consider korim, if one organism moves to the other organism and fuses, the one that moves is called as a male. The one that receives is called as a female. But in case of higher organisms, we don't stick to that definition. Instead, we say that we have a specific character, so he is considered as male. At a specific character ase, so he karone tak ami female koisu. Kinte lower organisms of identify character nathake. He karone jun jai male, ar june receive kore female. Okay? Okay, so this point is important. Question ahe, is sexual reproduction present in bacteria? No. Is sexual recombination present in bacteria? Yes. How sexual reproduction, some details are put him all of this off. Maybe in the next class. Oh, the time is over. Yes. Hey, Roba, yes. No, yes, yes. Remember what I said, how many pages? Yes to me, no, because you were absent in the last class. I think you all know. Okay. Huh? Wow. এটা কাম কৰা নালাগে So out of the 8 types, these are the 5 types that you have to talk in details. Baki tinta upor eku question aha nai. Right? Baki tinta porhiboi nalage NCERT bookot nai. Right? So today we have started with the first kingdom, that is kingdom Monera. The points that we remember: ancient kingdom. Second, unicellular organisms. Third, we have certain characteristics of Monera. As far as locomotion is concerned, cell wall is concerned, nutrition is concerned, we have certain exceptions also. Exceptions kini bhalke poriba. And lastly, we have types of Monera. Types of Monera keta 8ta. And the best example of Monera, or the common example that we talk about, is always bacteria. Bacteria belongs to eubacteria. What is eubacteria? True bacteria is called as eubacteria. Right? And in the next class, we will be starting with eubacteria. Clear? So next class, heading eubacteria kori thoba. I think that's all for today. Thank you.